Rugby union. Is it still a game for all sizes?
And as I go to hit him low, his knee comes up and just knocks me clean out.
Concussions in rugby union is said to have doubled over the last 5 years. But has it blighted our game for longer than we know?
Did you ever suffer concussions in your career?
I had loads. I prided myself. I'm proud of myself.
In this documentary, I managed to track down a scientist, an international referee, as well as legends of the game who have all had their say on whether it really is a case of mind over clatter. Concussion. What is it? I paid PhD research student Tom Owens a visit to find out exactly how a concussion can affect the human brain. For someone who doesn't know much about concussion, or someone who's watching this who doesn't know much about concussion, could you give us the simplest form of what it actually is?
Yeah, so a concussion is a form of brain injury in its most basic sense, whereby the brain will accelerate within the skull. Now, the brain isn't attached to anything other than the brain stem, which attaches to our spinal cord, but the brain itself is essentially floating within the skull, and as a result of acceleration type injuries whereby we might bump heads with one another or make contact with the ground, the brain is then making contact with the skull, and as a result of that we cause structural damage.
And taking your professional hat off, would you, in your opinion, say rugby's a dangerous sport?
Yes, definitely. I think it's physical in nature, there are repetitive impacts.
And this probably sounds like a silly question, but in your research, have you found a way of preventing concussions?
That would be, I'd be a richer man if I did, but no, and I think that's a fundamental thing that's never going to be solved. There's always going to be a risk of concussion. Never.
One of many professional rugby players impacted by concussion is former Dragons and Exeter Chiefs player Adam Hughes, who retired just over 2 years ago. You actually had a head knock in a pre-season game, I believe. Could you talk to us more about that?
That was going into pre-season. I think it was our last run against the Cardiff Blues at home, Rodney Parade. Fortunately, Josh Navidi's running down the wing. I just go and make a tackle on him, and as I go to hit him low, his knee comes up and just knocks me clean out.
Obviously, having that at the back of your head would have affected your game, probably.
Oh, without doubt, I would say that my game and my ability to play to the level I was beforehand definitely dropped off, because you're thinking a lot more about the hits you make and the tackles you're going into.
When you had the big concussion that eventually ended up in your retirement, you went up to Birmingham, I believe.
Well, this was almost another level now, because I was told that this is like the best guy in the country, which is why we went so far to go and see him, and that he would know for sure. But like any neurosurgeon anywhere, they don't fully know, because we don't fully understand concussion enough at the moment. It was a case of he could tell me what was wrong, like he could see little scars in my brain, he could see how I was reacting to these tests, but he had no idea to say that if I was to carry on, would this happen, or I could carry on and be absolutely fine.
We talked about you flying earlier. Was your dream to become a commercial pilot?
Yeah, that would have been the ideal plan, but unfortunately that was put to bed for the same reasons as why I couldn't play rugby.
What was your feelings when you knew that wasn't a possibility?
Pretty gutted, because I've been wanting to do that for years, and obviously I got my pilot's license when I was about 20.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's no point to dwell on it, just go on and move on.
And alongside your business, you took up the whistle.
Yeah.
What was the thought process behind that?
Trying to not get fat was the main one.
You're doing well.
To try and keep fit, and also just to try and sort of keep that buzz, really, because that's the one thing you miss, is being around the rugby environment, the people. And also the games as well. So just trying to recreate that buzz, and so you don't lose that, and then keep a part of what you left behind.
It's clear the referee has a huge part to play in an 80-minute game. So I visited one of the best upcoming referees in World Rugby to see if the officials have an impact on concussions at all. In your experience as a referee, can you recall any time in a match where you've had to deal with a bad concussion?
Yeah, quite a few times actually. Specifically, I can't think of any off the top of my head apart from maybe Morgan Parra in Claremont. And I remember making a comment saying, yeah, he was unconscious. Now that was actually just a picture in my head that I saw. I didn't know he was unconscious. I hadn't gone and checked on him. I made that assumption from him lying on the floor. Of course, he went off. He was absolutely fine. He passed the HIA. The doctors confirmed he was never unconscious from the footage they had. So yeah, I learned a lot from that actually, is actually just leaving them do their job unless I've got something factual
Yeah.
to add to them.
And why do you think it's so prevalent now? Because, you know, especially with the HIE that's been brought in as a referee, you know, you're seeing these collisions every week, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting, as you see. We've talked about it before, where, you know, we try to drop the tackle height to the sights of the tackler a lot, but actually you see so many times the tackler getting knocked out, not the ball carrier, and then that begs the question. Then, well, actually, what can we do here to make it safer for the tackler? Talk to the Wales team at the moment. Their key, or their sort of like philosophy around tackle is obviously making a sort of like obviously a physical hit and a completed tackle, but also keeping yourself safe so you can last the game of rugby. Yeah. So it is nice to see that teams are doing that. You go to the regions and they're practicing safe tackle technique. So it is sort of being highlighted, not just sort of like by people outside of the immediate game, such as the scientists and the researchers, but also the coaches and the players. They are aware of it.
Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the rest of the documentary was filmed through the camera of my laptop, but it didn't stop some Welsh legends from getting in on the act.
Obviously, probably the biggest concern is concussion, which this is focused on. Did you ever suffer concussions in your career?
Yeah, man, I had loads. I prided myself. I prided myself on getting smacked on the bonds, but I remember those dizzy spells. As you go on, you know, it's only now you recognise what it was to play with that blur.
Has it affected you later on in life at all?
I do worry a bit about it, because my family always joke about the fact that I don't remember stuff that they've just told me the day before or earlier or stuff. I wore a scrum helmet not long into professionalism, but in the early days I was one of the first players to wear it, and the coloured one. So it's like a Belisha beacon. So people used to smash you in the head because they could see your head. So I do have issues in that respect.
In terms of how maybe World Rugby or governing bodies deal with concussion these days, do you think there's enough being done?
When I was working for the Welsh Rugby Union with Steve Hansen, you know, there was stuff being developed then, and in fairness to the governing bodies, and I think Wales may have been one of the forerunners, they started to monitor this with Prav in the WRU a long time ago, and I think they drove change, and World Rugby has used that evidence to help.
Is it on the coaches' minds? Is it on Wayne Pivac's minds, especially after the World Cup with so many red cards in the group stages? Is the tackling technique involved in the training now?
Yes, Matt, you just can't afford to go anywhere near the head now. But yeah, definitely in training, you know, all the drills are sort of designed so the tackle area is brought down below chest height, really. You know, it used to be, you know, I can remember 2008 when Shaw came in, we had this big emphasis on one low, one high to stop the offload. It's very difficult to do that now. So, yeah, it's definitely on all coaches' minds, particularly, you know, from a defensive point of view, defensive coaches. The game has, over the last sort of 2-3 years, you know, you've really got to work hard on dropping that body height.
I put a survey out about concussion and how, you know, what can prevent it. And a lot of people actually said less rugby league coaches. So, you know, what was your experience like with Sean, you know?
Sean was brilliant. Absolutely, you know, technically, as a defence coach, I know I said this, I wish I'd met Sean when I was 22, not 32. I would have been a far better player. So, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that with less rugby league coaches. You know, it was drilled really hard into the players about your tackle technique, you know, and just, like you say, initially when he came in, you could go a little bit higher. And that was always to stop the contact, stop the offload, not to ever make contact with anyone's head. But then, you know, now, I know, you know, they've been working so hard on dropping that body height in the tackle.
What measures can be taken to prevent less concussions from happening?
Well, I think they're doing the best they can in many ways. People want to watch rugby is because of the physicality, is because of the contact. And I think, you know, you are seeing players now, there are zero risks taken. So I know players from back in the day and, you know, would say the game has gone soft, but, you know, they need to come and watch the boys train with the players now.
Yeah.
The game hasn't gone soft. They just at the end of the day, it is a game, it is a sport, and we're just trying to make it safer.
Well, the biggest sign was when Sam Warpton obviously took over your number 7 shirt for Wales, and it was a big size difference, wasn't it? Because he was a bit of a gym freak.
The biggest difference for me is the backs. The back. When I started playing, you had some, Scott Gibbs, Steve Lewis and stuff upon, physical hard men. But then, he didn't have wingers like George North or centres like Jamie Roberts, and the backs in the modern game now, they are just as big as the forwards. Now you look at a field, you turn up the Welsh training, and you had no idea who is who. You struggle to differentiate because the backs now are so physical as well, so big.
The scary thing for me when I did the concussion program was the education. No one really knows. They get a bang on the head. The first thing they want to do as a player is stay on the field. You get forced off the field now. You get forced to do a HIA. If you pass that, you get ongoing tests afterwards, and that's it.
Is given a time limit on whether the player can come back to the field. Do you think that maybe should be longer, maybe half hour?
I think it borderlines to this. It kind of goes to the side of we'd rather the player not go back on the field than pass this test and get back out there, if you know what I mean. Because it's not an easy test to pass. It's very intense, and I think that's why it's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So doctors, I suppose that when a player goes off and he looks like he's been knocked out and they take him off head, HIA, I'm sure in this day and age, the doctor is thinking, I hope he doesn't pass it. I get the intensity of it as well, the 10 minutes.
What did you think about the refereeing decisions during the World Cup? Because I think there was more red cards during the group stage than there was during any of the World Cups put together.
If you look at stats, the most ill-disciplined World Cup we've had.
Yeah.
However, it wasn't a dirty World Cup either. So it's a fine line, isn't it? Of course, we want our game to be safer. We still want our players to be able to walk off that field, fit and ready for the next game. On the other hand, we want it to be entertaining. We like watching the physicality of the rugby union game. It's probably one of the most physical sports you'll have. So it's the balance in between. Yes, there were more red and yellow cards, but I think there was less injuries in this World Cup than we've seen in any other. So for me, that's a success.
Yeah. And Martin Williams actually said during your career, your height and your size actually helped you evade the tackles better. Did you suffer many concussions during your career?
I did go to hospital once from a bang on the head because I was violently sick in the house afterwards and felt really dizzy, which was deemed a concussion. But I've also had a bang on the head, not realised what's happened to me for 5 to 10 minutes, finished the game off and had a few beers after the game.
Yeah.
So, thank God, having done this concussion program, I've had the scans and everything. There's no further problems or ongoing issues with my head, which is great. But I'll tell you one thing, I wish I could go. I wouldn't have changed anything I've done in my career, don't get me wrong, but I would love to be playing now because the attention to detail in the tackle area is much bigger.
Yeah.
The players are getting bigger and taller and stronger, but the height of the tackle is getting lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
Which means Cheslin, Kobe, Fukuoka, Matsushima, Hogg are going to have a field day, when the law is fully introduced and we know exactly what's going on. And I'd love to be playing in at a time where no one can tackle me, above the waist. That would be fantastic for me because I can promise you no one will get anywhere near me.
It'd be perfect for you next year then, the Lions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I'll be 40. I'll be 44 next year for the Lions. That's the difference.
What's it like as a parent on the sidelines watching? Do you ever, as you said, wince?
He's got the same attitude to me. He's just going to get stuck in. Now that frightens me because I've been there. I've got stuck in with bigger lads and I got hurt. So I know he's going to have bumps, bruises, cuts, stitches, those kind of things over the years. So that does worry me, but I've only got to watch him on the field and in training. He's running around with a smile on his face. He's got his skull cap on. He's got his gum shield in because I've instilled it into him that he has to wear it. And, and I'm there and playing the game with him. Every tackle he makes, I feel the tackle. Every time he makes a line break or scores a try, I'm doing it as well. I'm living my life through him again. And I love it, and that's why again, another reason I did the program was to show. Look, I've got kids playing sport. I got my boys playing rugby. I don't want to stop kids playing rugby. I don't want mums and dads to be scared of this program and go, oh, I'm pulling my boy out of rugby or my girl out of rugby. I want them to go, oh, look, we can make this safer for our kids. We just need to do this and that. They are changing the laws to make the game safer. There are concussion protocols. If your boy or girl has a bang on the head, let's just pull them off the field and give them a rest.
I've learned so much from so many amazing people involved in a sport that brings so many people together. No, you can't brush off a concussion, but with the research and the laws being put in place to combat the blight on the game, your mind will certainly be put at ease.